Ed Worley is joining us as the first one this morning, at least on my list. Gordon Smith in Denmark. Ed Worley's in SoCal. We're going to have some jobs for Gordon and Ed here coming up in the next couple weeks. Important jobs if they're agreeable. Mark Holland, 12 days to Christmas. Maybe I'm getting a yacht under the tree.
What a good idea.
I hope so, Mark. Greg Phillips on the Gold Coast of Australia. John Lammertz Van Buren saying good evening from Holland. Alistair Murray, Mr. President Emeritus of the Australian Sailing. Good day from beautiful Mettung. He's out at his holiday house outside of Melbourne. Mm-hmm. Andy Cox in Bermuda, where it's happy hour.
Yay.
Jeff Kitson in Michigan, it's snowy. Only 97 days till spring. Bob Walker in the Texas Panhandle. Graham Sweeney in Shetland, Scotland. I talked to Graham this morning.
Did you?
Welcome, everybody. Let's get this one across the proverbial starting line. Julia,
what?
I trust you are well.
Oh, yes. Alive and kicking.
Ready for show 791. We're almost 800.
That's incredible.
On Friday the 13th.
Can't forget that.
Can't forget that. Julia Vadekind, Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club. We are live from Studio B here at the Beach Street Yacht Club and Julia and the Julia and Tom Show. And it is Friday the 13th. Are you superstitious?
No.
I'm not either. But several people sent that to me.
Uh-huh.
That it is a noted. You didn't even know it when you came down here. We were doing the tech check just now with Hamish. You said, "Oh, is it Friday the 13th?" I didn't even realize it.
Sometimes it's a lucky day.
It's a good way to be.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it was a good lucky day for you. Speaking of lucky days,
Yes.
Hamish Ross is standing by patiently, quietly. We'll get to him in a minute. AC historian, deed of gift expert, and much more. He is in Paonui, which is where all the wealthy folks in New Zealand go, and that's where they have their batches. That's where they have their summer
batches
homes.
are. Yeah.
Out on the Coromandel, and I didn't say that. That's what Wikipedia says.
Oh,
It's where the rich guys like Hamish go, huh?
Of course.
We got his mic cut off, so he can't even reply. Friday the 13th. Good evening to Christopher Gillingham in Limington. Fog Machine, a.k.a. Lance Burke here in the Bay Area. Almost time for a rum in the eggnog. Andrew Pindar, hello from the prospective next venue of the America's Cup.
Mm-hmm.
That's Scarborough. He'd love to host it, and probably be a good place to do it. Graham Sweeney, I'm not allowed to forget Friday the 13th. It's my Deb's birthday. Happy birthday to her, Graham. Fritz Mueller down in windy Miami. The Finn North American started today at the esteemed Coconut Grove Sailing Club. And Alan Long, hello from Drizzly Lago Vista, Texas on this Friday the 13th, Julia, which reminds me I've got to reach back for the bourbon cream.
Yes.
From
yes, we need a little sip of that.
Kentucky and Savannah and beyond. Give you a little bit of bourbon cream in your coffee. Coffee by Julia. Thanks
Yes.
to Clayton Embley.
Thanks, Mr. Embley.
Back there on the Croutonic Corner, which the Croutonic Corner is getting, I've moved it off the desk and it's back now here on the back table. So we have more space both for the technical here on the desk and also for the Croutonic Corner. Andrew Pindar is using the Latin Vendredi 13 as game-changing yacht design development goes. That was way up there. What? Vendredi 13? Okay, let's carry on here because
That's Friday the 13th.
I get that.
Yeah.
In Italian, right? Or in Latin, or what is that? Come on, Julia.
I don't know.
Well, you know who's with us today, right?
I do.
Dr. Hamish Ross is with us. He's standing by, as I said a moment ago, in the Coromandel in Paonui. Let's bring his mic up. Good morning to you, Hamish.
Good morning.
It's what,
Tom,
minus...
Julia, all the posies. It's great to be on here. It's a fantastic day here. There's not a cloud to be seen. The sea's sparkling. I've been for a surf with my oldest surfing buddy of 50 years and his son. So it's a great morning.
Well, it's good to see that it's nice somewhere. It's a little, as Julia told you in the tech check, it's a little rainy and overcast, and it's winter here in San Francisco. It's okay. Hamish, I just was looking, and when I Googled you, I was looking for a good picture of you. And what pops up when you Google Dr. Hamish Ross or just Hamish Ross and sailing, pops up all of your recent and past and appearances on Sailing Illustrated. Show 791, show 720, show 583, show 303, and more. You're one of our most frequent, and most popular guests.
Indeed.
Oh, it's very nice. It's nice to be back, however.
Nice to have you back. Gordon Smith is saying, is Jody still the only one who gets to say testicles? Just asking for a friend. Vendretti is French, Julia. Pindar saying it's French, not Latin. Well, that's a Romance language, so.
It's close to.
Chris Fury saying hi from Melbourne. Mark Holland is saying hi to Hamish. Great to see you again. You know Mark Holland, Hamish?
Yep, so it's nice to see, and thank you very much. It's nice to be back here once again.
And speaking of the Coromandel, Hamish, we got to look at these pictures. You sent three. Where's your house approximately in this picture?
Well, that you can see the bay there and that large hill, which is called Mount Pawanui. Well, we're sort of down toward the base of that, pretty close to the beach. So up further, Tom. Yeah, just about where your finger is in there.
Your house is there, your batch?
Yeah, that's where the batch is.
Well, it's a beautiful part of the world. I haven't been there since after Leslie, Meg, and I got in a car and went out there for a week, I think, after the 2000, tell me what, 3 America's Cup. It was either 2000 or 2003. Some beautiful images of a beautiful part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so geologically speaking, that's called a tombo, which is a strip of sand which has been created by a river mouth. And so there's a bit of a bar there, creates a good surf break right along that surf, although it wasn't a particularly good day when that photograph was taken. And it's wonderful boating. It's one of the jewels of New Zealand. And that is about 12 miles off the Pawanui coast. That's a place called the Alderman Islands. And frankly, they could have filmed Jurassic Park there. It's a stunning, pristine reserve. In fact, you need a special license to be able to land there, but people go on their boats and fish and dive and generally have a great time. It's so remote, but so stunningly beautiful. Quite a different landscape.
Are you headed there after the show today? Didn't you say?
Well, that's the plan. That's the plan. Unless we have a few westerlies and offshore breeze coming in. So as long as that keeps down to sort of under 15 knots, yes, we'll go. But if it starts to crank up a bit, we'll maybe stay on the coast.
Now, Hamish, when we were doing the tech check just before we went live, you said you'd already been surfing this morning with one of your 50-year buddies of 50 years. Is that right?
That's right. I've been out in the water with David Jackson. He's an anaesthetist in a city just south of here.
A what?
And an anaesthetist.
What's that mean?
It means the guy who puts you under when you have an operation.
Anesthetist. Anesthetist. I like that.
Yeah.
Julia, is that correct grammar or is that just a Kiwi pronunciation?
It's a Kiwi.
It's okay. It's good, Hamish. We love it.
I do.
Anesthetist.
He applies anesthetics. Anyway, he helps look after the trauma room in Tauranga Hospital, which is a city on the coast, a couple of hours south of here. And we've been surfing together since high school and before. And we're joined by his young son, who's now a pilot for Air New Zealand. So it was a great time. And so Tom and Harry and I went out for a surf this morning. It wasn't a big surf. It's probably best described as Malibu on a mellow day, but we had the entire beach to ourselves, so it was wonderful.
Yeah, that's right.
I got to go back to that slide. Just look at that. Gorgeous. Just absolutely gorgeous. Alistair Murray is with you. He says, I'm with Hamish. It's called English, Tom. English.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, enough of that. Now tell us about your kids, one of whom I taught. I got him started playing the bass guitar. I'm sure he took off from when we were all in Valencia, his neighbors, just not too far apart there out in Alfinach, that suburb, that urbanización outside of Puzol, outside of Valencia. Where are your sons now?
Well, you were just referring to Fergus. They're both in London working as lawyers.
Lawyers!
Yes, I'm afraid so. I didn't obviously beat it out of them hard enough when they were younger. But anyway, genes, I guess, managed to soak through. But anyway, Fergus he's involved. He's more of a tax lawyer. He's done a lot of AI tax structuring work. He's sort of taught himself coding, and he's in high demand. He was with PwC in Melbourne, and he had a special project in London. And at the moment, he's between projects, and he's surfing in the Philippines with an old family friend of ours who we met in Valencia, a local family. And in recent years, well, he came to New Zealand for a year or so on a transfer, and we looked after him. And he now runs a surfing camp in an offshore island of the Philippines. And Fergus is enjoying surfing and sun and everything else that one does when you're young.
Both are lawyers. Hard to believe. They were in Australia, now in the UK. But Hamish, are you still lawyerling or lawyerly? Are you lawyering, or are you over that and now doing something that contributes to the gross national product of your country and the world?
Well, I do a number of things. Lawyering, you never cease being a lawyer. I guess you're always helping people and giving advice. But as an income, I have given it away pretty much as an income. I am advising view people on small matters from time to time. I'm a trustee of a marina. It's run as a charitable trust, and we give away around about $500,000 a year to maritime charities such as the Spirit of New Zealand, which is a sail training ship, also to the New Zealand Coast Guard. Recently, we're sponsored, for example, a life jacket replacement program to get life jackets out to the less advantaged people of the country. Drowning in an island state is a bit of a problem in New Zealand, and so the more life jackets we get out, the better. And we
don't all the kids as part of their school curriculum in grade school? Because when Meg was going to school there during the 2000 and or 03 Cup, and she would have been, 9 or 10, 8, 9, 10. They had to learn how to swim. They went to school barefoot and learned to swim.
That's right.
Isn't that part of the school curriculum?
It has been, although in recent years it's been weakened, and lack of funding has caused some schools to close their pools, which is quite a tragedy, really. And also we've got a number of immigrants to the country who aren't as water wise and as trained with water skills. And so that presents its own challenge. So, we're very conscious of it. And, being an island country, we do have drowning as one of the highest causes of accidental death.
Wow.
And the small role we can play is getting cheap, if not free, life jackets out to people who can't afford them.
Nice. Well, Clayton Embley says everyone hates lawyers until they need one. But what if I needed to have the kitchen here at the Beach Street Yacht Club redone? Who would I call?
Yeah, well, I do run I own a kitchen company as well, and it's been in business for about 66 years. I bought it about 10 years ago. Employs about 15 people, and we're pretty active in building kitchens and things. I'm not allowed anywhere near the tools. My skill level in that level is much to be desired, but I help provide advice and marketing and use my other skills, if you like.
Okay, well, come up here. You can fix the Beach Street Yacht Club kitchen. Julia, your kitchen could use a little work. It's pretty good. You get Hamish up here.
Oh yes.
I think I'll have to send one of my tradesmen up. I think I think you'll end up with a much far worse kitchen than I got my hands on it.
I think you're better off doing business in New Zealand.
If you're just joining us, we have the esteemed Hamish Ross, a good friend. He's in Pauanui on the Coromandel, normally in Auckland, where he lives, Monday through Friday. But he's got a batch out there. Never invited me to your batch, by the way.
Me neither.
Or Julia.
We both have an invitation. You can come anytime you like.
Okay, that's nice. And he, of course, is a deed of gift expert and America's Cup historian. Has been involved in several Cup campaigns. And the theme of today's show for Hamish is, with apologies to Charles Dickens, the America's Christmas Cup Carol. America's Cup, past, present, And Charles Dixon didn't say future. He said yet to come, which I think is appropriate. That makes you Scrooge, doesn't it, Hamish?
Well, I did accuse you of that, saying I might have been presented as Ebenezer Scrooge. Just call me Ebony for short.
Ebenezer. Our guest is Ebenezer. Ebenezer Ross. Clayton Emily says, ditch her quick and hide. Is that wondering if that's the best divorce law? All the legal jokes are coming in, including from Ryman. So let's carry on here and ask both of you, if you know, what are we celebrating today? Julia, you get the first crack. Ladies first.
It looks like Taylor Swift.
It is Taylor Swift.
It's her birthday.
Did you know that, Hamish?
I did.
My God, you guys are smart. It is indeed Taylor Swift's birthday, her 35th, born in 1989. Now, why do we run something about her? Well, it's because she is Swifty the Sailor. I kid you not. I think I've run this before, in fact. This is from, I found it on Facebook, but originally appeared in People magazine many years ago. A picture she apparently submitted, tried sailing in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, getting slapped by the boom, rope burn from the sail, and slamming into other sailboats like bumper cars at age 8 with my brother Austin. Ah, yes, sailing lessons. Who would have known? And this is at the Yacht Club of Stone Harbor, not the Stone Harbor Yacht Club, the Yacht Club of Stone Harbor in New Jersey, where they had the summer home. Her parents were affluent, had a nice place apparently. And that club, by the way, is celebrating 95 years. About 12 years ago, she put this young man on the map. She was already a star, and she was dating Connor Kennedy because she said in that same article, quote, he has a nice boat. A nice boat, Hamish. Now, do you know who?
What, Sailing Illustrated should commission a couple of nice sailing songs to replace some of the ones we have at the moment.
Well, I think the sport ought to glom onto her and make her our patron saint. Don't you think, Julia?
Well, she has a terrific following.
Well, she does. And now, who is Connor Kennedy?
He's a nephew.
Of? He's a sailor. He is from a big sailing family. This is a couple of pictures from 2012. When she was sailing with Connor Kennedy out on the Cape, and she liked him in part because he did have a boat. Here they are canoodling past an optimist, a winter optimist, no less. This is the New York Post on page 6, the Society page, exclusive in the span of, this is from 2012, in just the span of 7 days, Robert F. Kennedy's grandson, RFK Jr.'s son, Connor Kennedy, went from near obscurity to dating the hottest country star in the nation.
Pays to have a nice boat.
His dad, Connor's dad, is joining soon-to-be President Trump's cabinet as the Secretary of, what, HHS, Health, Human... What's HHS stand for, Julia?
Health and Human Services.
Well done. Taylor the Sailor. This is Sailor Illustrated. We got a picture of Trump in the show with Connor's dad, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and we got a picture of her in the bathing suit. This is actually, she is a water woman, powerboater, sailor, stand-up, paddleboarder, near her $17 million mansion in Watch Hill, Rhode Island, which is in the southwest corner of Little Rhodey of Rhode Island. That's a 2016 picture. And of course, you all know Swift is one of the world's best-selling music artists with over 200 million units sold and a record 7 albums that moved 1 million copies first week. She is the highest grossing touring act, just completed her Eras tour, Eras. The first billionaire with music as her primary source of income, and the world's richest female musician. So I had to cover that at this day, not this day in history, but what are we celebrating? We got to celebrate her birthday. She's beautiful, she's talented, she's a sailor. Happy birthday to Sailor Swifty. Happy 35th birthday, right, Hamish?
Yeah, I'd like to have a quick shout out to the birthday of my cousin Fraser Simmons, who's a professor of medicine at the Anderson Medical Center in Houston.
Houston? We say
Houston.
Houston.
That's right. And he's one of the world experts in breast cancer. And he goes around lecturing all around the world. And so I'd like to have a quick shout out to good old Fraser Simmons, now of Houston, Texas.
Houston. Oh, my God, we're ruining the King's English here, Hamish, Julia. Okay, happy birthday,
Yes.
Swifty. And also, we're celebrating, as always, our Fozy. Whether you give us money or not, we still celebrate you. And I'm not going to ask for it. We said we wouldn't do that till we get into the new year. Get after our 800th show, and we'll go back to holding out the tin can, right, Julia? Patreon.com/joining Sailing Illustrated if you want to. What were you saying?
We're not holding out tin can. We're holding out opportunities.
Nicely done. Well done, Julia. Fog Machine saying back on Taylor Swift, her Eras tour had more than $2 billion in ticket sales.
Mm-hmm.
Clayt Embley saying she always sings about falling for the wrong guy. How appropriate that she dates a sailor. Well, she's no longer dating a sailor. She's dating an NFL football player.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Kelsey.
And getting a lot of publicity for that.
For them.
But can she write code for him and her, but for the NFL? But can she write code or cure cancer? J. Frederick Bland is asking Hamish, apropos your comment about who is this friend? Is a friend of yours or a relative?
Oh, my cousin.
Cousin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What's his name again?
Fraser Simmons.
Fraser Simmons. Okay, well.
Professor Fraser Simmons.
In Houston.
In Houston.
Not Huston. You know, in New York, that street is pronounced Huston.
Also incorrectly.
Incorrectly. You pronounce it Houston, and we say Houston. The city down in Texas says Houston. Our Sailing Illustrated, Fozy, thank you for your support, and we appreciate all of you very much. Speaking of Fozy, do you know who these two gentlemen are? We'll let Hamish go first this time.
I can see Andrew Pindar there, of course.
Yep, that's Pindar, who was on the show a week ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is Andrew Pindar with the famous Terry Martinez from France, famously good journalist, photographer for our beloved sport. And he is retired now. There is a confirmation from Andrew that Terry Martinez, we haven't seen him in a while, is alive, well, and kicking. I will send another.
I should have known that it was Terry, but he's obviously looking different when he was on the Ilingi team, that's for sure.
Well, speaking of which, Hamish, just for you, I have a picture of him from that era.
Oh, look at that.
And he's grown a beard and grown his hair out, too, and a famously good photographer. Was he your team photographer for?
He was. He produced some great images. He was. I'm delighted to see he's retired healthy and smiling.
Mm-hmm.
And
we had a French guy. We had Gilles Martin Raget in that same era. Was our team photographer, also French and also a superb photographer. This note this morning from Andrew, another note, I got one from him yesterday. He's saying, I said, what's the deal? Why is he there? And why is his hair long? And he's looking relaxed. And Andrew says he retired earlier this year at age 69 and is now touring the world in a very rugged four-wheel drive Mercedes camper van. Iceland, Norway, how do you say that? Lofoten Islands. Just been up in the Shetlands. I checked with Sweeney to see if they'd run into each other. They have not. Mm-hmm. Next year, he's heading to Canada and eventually Alaska. That photo courtesy of Andrew Pindar. Much appreciated by the Fozy contributing to the show. And Pindar, we got a job for Andrew Pindar as well as Graham Sweeney and a few others, the Zoomers and beyond, which we'll talk about in a moment. But in the meantime, I want you to see my hands are free and I can change the slide. Did you like that, Julia?
I'm
a technological improvement here. I can change the slide. That is from the 6 Meter Worlds, 27 September to the 5th of October. We talked about it on the show. Haven't really covered it, but a couple of Fozy were involved in that event, and here is the video. Recognize him and her, center? What a great class. Julia, you chased the 6 meters around the world for years.
Absolutely.
St. Francis 6-meter class and beyond, to Europe, to Australia. And they had their Europeans, as I said earlier this year, in Spain. And the classic division was won by His Majesty King Juan Carlos, the King Emeritus of Spain, of course, abdicated in favor of his son, another sailor who was then Crown Prince Felipe and now King Felipe, sailed in the 92 Olympics. There's Juan Carlos and his team. Long live the meter yachts, Ed Worley is saying. Yeah, he knew that was the King of Spain. Bravo, Zulu. And how did I think to run this today? Well, it's because I got a Christmas card this morning from His Majesty. He and I become friends thanks to Gerardo Seeliger and others, and we always send birthday greetings back and forth. And he sent his Christmas card, taken obviously at the 6-meter Worlds Feliz Navidad y Prospero 2025. I have a happy and prosperous 2025 from His Majesty King Juan Carlos. We appreciated that very much. And he sent that through, as I said, overnight. Saw it this morning in my feed. By the way, if any of you want to send us your digital, please. I've gotten a couple. In fact, I got one from St. Francis Yacht Club, Julia.
Mm-hmm.
And I got one from George and Judy Carmody, our Fosies up in Boston and New York, good friends of Claire Harrington. Mm-hmm. And I already told you about the birthday card. Well, I told you last week about the birthday card from Alistair Murray making fun of my age. I'll always think of you as someone older. Thanks, Alistair. That was really nice. His handwriting is Crutonic, though, Julia. Look at that.
I can't say that because mine is too these days.
It's probably better than mine, which is Crutonic. But if you want to send a card through, if you mail it, fine. I'll take a picture or put it back there. But send us a digital card and we'll share it like we did with His Majesty's Christmas card. We appreciate it.
Hey, Tom, isn't it fantastic that the meter classes are still going strong? It's got to be one of the greatest and longest lasting yacht rating rules and most successful in all of sailing history.
Let's talk about the history.
Yes.
1906. Tell us about the meter rule.
Well, the meter rule was born out of a couple of conferences held in 1906, 1907, and it was really a European-driven thing. The Americans sent observers, but in those days you got to understand communications and travel was difficult across the Atlantic. And so the Europeans did develop the meter rule and enabled them as countries who had their own individual regimes, yacht rating regimes, to start sailing against each other and created a wonderful set of European sport from an early age. And once the meter rule was established, we just saw so many meter classes just bloom and have continued all the way through to a greater or lesser degree.
What are the major ones? The 5.5, the
Yes,
6, the 8. There were some 10s, at least in the Great Lakes here in this country for a while. And of course,
Yes.
the 12s. Were there any other big developments?
Yeah, 15s were strong, and they still exist in the classic sphere, and they're utterly beautiful classic yachts, the 15s. There were, I believe, some 24s. They were, I stand to be corrected, but I believe Sir Thomas Lipton in 1907 attempted to challenge in a 24-meter yacht, but his challenge was rejected by the New York Yacht Club, who refused to be restricted, if you like, by a class rule. Eventually, over several decades, they saw the light, and that's when the J class in the America's Cup was born.
Yeah, well, Alan Long he's saying that the 8 meters are going strong in the Great Lakes. Alan is normally in Cleveland, but he moves around, and I know there's a fair few 8s, and they've had some 8-meter racing of late in.
There've been a few 11s around here too.
Well, that was a different boat though. The 11 meters that they race here in that professional circuit here in San Francisco, 15, 20 years ago, Fog Machine will tell us, Lance Burke will remind us. In fact, Alistair Murray was up here doing some racing in that. I think Ron Stan supplied some gear for those boats, but I think those boats were actually 11 meters long. And they weren't to the meter rule, were they, Hamish?
Look, I couldn't answer on 11 metre. It's the first time I've heard of that measurement in context of the international rule, but they are extremely popular still in Scandinavia and in Europe, and some of the certainly the classics up in those parts of the world are largely made up of metre boats of various descriptions.
Now, a couple other go ahead, Julia.
Michael Frank reminds us of the Super 12s.
Well, yeah, the Super 12s. That was a great idea somebody had, but it didn't come to fruition, did it?
No.
Let's go back to the comments, though, because Michael Frank, but Alan Long's comment about the 8s, but John Lammerts Van Buren, who is also a yacht racing historian of considerable repute and a wooden boat expert, right? Hamish, is that fair to say? Good friend of yours.
It's fair to say. John and I share a great deal of enthusiasm, and he is quite correct that the Shamrock was built in 1907 by Fife, was a 23 metre. It was spectacularly successful for Lipton, and it was a real shame that we didn't see an America's Cup in 1907, 1908 with 23 metre yachts. But anyway.
Well, and then speaking of 8s, we forget that the 6s and 8s and 5.5s were all in the Olympics at one time or another, right? Were the 6s in the Olympics? For sure, the 5.5s were in the 50s, 60s, and the 8 meters were in the Olympics way back at the
32.
Yeah, well, Angelita won the 32 Olympics, and the only reason, well, Clayton Embley knows that, but one of the reasons that I'm reminded of that is because the guy who was running the 84 Olympics, Peter Uberoth, bought Angelita. He wasn't.
Oh, he did?
He was a bit of a boater, but not a major boater. He bought Angelita, had it fixed up, and used it as his yacht for the 84 Olympics.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that was Angelita that won the 1932 Olympics. When 8s were in the Olympics. Magnus Wheatley saying, "Great to see Hamish. My goodness, he looks well. What's the secret, Hamish?"
It's surfing.
You could say the secret is not to be hanging out with Grant Dalton in Barcelona.
I'll use a famous quote: "Surfing's the source."
Surfing.
Swear to God.
Surfing's the source.
See if any folks can tell me where that comes from.
Surfing is the source. That's a quote?
That's a quote. Swear to God.
The Endless Summer?
No, you're on the right track, though.
It's from a movie, though.
Yes, it is.
Julia, do you know?
I don't.
Tell us, Hamish. Well, let's wait. Hang on. We'll see if Afosi knows it. Point Break?
Yeah, that's it.
Clayton Embley got it.
Yeah.
Magnus is laughing, I think, at my little joke. Does John Emmett qualify for the 1.8 meter rule? Stingray. Okay. Fozy trivia question
Tom, before we get off the meter rule, one thing I find quite fascinating is that the Jays kind of died after about 37, and all the wealthy guys started building 12s. Just prior to the outbreak of the Second World War. And I've done a little bit of research in this area, and it's quite fascinating that had the war not occurred, that the 12s would have been in the America's Cup much earlier than they were.
In the 30s?
Yeah, in the late 30s, they became the yacht of choice of big boat racing. And they mainly because the 12s just were so darn expensive. And
the Jays were?
Sorry, yes, the Jays were so darn expensive. And so the 12s were really starting to be built both in America and in Britain as well, right up until literally the outbreak of the war. And as you know, there was we saw Vanderbilt take a 12 across to Britain in 1939 and raced the big boat season in 39. And he departed from Britain just within months of the war breaking out. And indeed, a lot of the crews were being called up into the reserves at the time.
Yeah, let's stick on meter boats for a sec, because John Lammerts Van Buren is saying, he's confirming what we were saying a minute ago. The 11-meter class doesn't technically exist. That was an 11-meter boat, and they were trying to make it sound, I think, make a connection to the America's Cup with those yachts.
But he gives a list.
And then he gives a list down below. You want to, what, you?
Yeah. It's the list is 4. Oops, I just lost it too. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15, 19, 23.
And then anything above 23 was designated as Class A. Okay, well, that's a list of classes that did exist at one time or another.
As meter boats.
Under the meter boat rule that dates from 1906, as Hamish said, 06, 07. Mark Holland is agreeing with you, Hamish. And Greg Norman. Hello, Greg. We got Greg on from the Great Lakes, his YouTube channel, Great Lakes Sailing. Inside Great Lakes Sailing. Peter Ubroth's 8-meter boat, I believe, is living in Chicago. The boat was beautifully, it was rehabbed and then maintained. I didn't sail on it. I did step aboard it once. It was in Long Beach for some meeting we had related to the Olympics 1984 in Long Beach. And on and on and on. People love the meter boats, don't they, Hamish?
They're stunningly beautiful craft. They're lovely to sail. Mm-hmm. They look magnificent. And, I think they really got it right when they wrote that rule. And, I guess I'm a classic yacht enthusiast, as you well know. And my belief is that they are just almost the epitome of beauty when it comes to sailing.
Well, it's a shame that all the America's Cup boats are not as robust and long-lived, I think is the right word, the way the 12s have been. And we got 12s, and okay, we have a few J boats from the 30s, and one that's been more recent, was designed in the 30s, but more recently built, Sfea. But the 12s have an afterlife. I don't know any IACC boats other than the one sailing around here in San Francisco Bay, which is one of our America Cup. It's one of the BMW Oracle racing boats. I think it's USA 72 or 76.
I don't know.
Brad Webb owns and uses as a head boat. Are there IACC boats sailing around in Auckland, Hamish?
Yes, these are what's called Sail NZ, and these are tourist excursion vessels. They run a couple of boats out of Auckland, and tourists go out and have a bit of a play around in the yachts and go out for a brief cruise on the harbour and have a bit of an old America's Cup experience. And it's commercially quite successful.
But there are a lot of 12 sail. Oh, why do I have King Juan Carlos's picture up there when I want Hamish? A lot of 12 still sailing around, and indeed the International 12-meter Association is running world championships and North American championships and European championships, and it's a robust, active, popular class. If only other America's Cup classes, Hamish, were as robust and popular and long-lived.
Yes.
Would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be nice. Okay, let's carry on here because we have a bit of an announcement. I got another picture of Trump in this show, you guys.
Uh-oh.
Look at this. What are we doing here? Well, I was inspired by Time magazine, who in the last couple of days has named incoming President Trump as the person of the year. And they have sometimes named some people who are doing good things or people who are doing bad things. So this probably, everybody can one way or another, whether you're on board and whether you're a MAGA person or not. MAGA, whether you're a MAGA person or not. But the idea is, I think we need a person of the year from a positive standpoint for our beloved sport. So I'm suggesting that in the next couple weeks before the new year, we, the FOSI, those of you that watch this show regularly, we come up with the Sailing Illustrated's Person of the Year, the Yacht Racing Person of the Year for 2024. The person who we think has had the most significant and beneficial impact
on the sport,
on our beloved sport of yacht, not sailing, but of yacht racing. And I'm suggesting that we would announce that on our New Year's Eve show. Oh. New Year's Eve is Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And are you going to be here then, Julia? Or are you going to be up at your batch? Are you going to be up at Calistoga? It's a detail.
If we're on the air, I'll be here.
Oh, then that's more like it. So I'm suggesting, Hamish, we talked about this briefly in the tech check, that we somehow come up with the Yacht Racing Person of the Year. We use the FOSI, those of you who are on here, because you're so smart, and so worldly, so erudite. You come out, you decide, first of all, who we should nominate. Then we'll discuss your nominations, the group, all of us. And then I'm going to have a smaller group of FOSI and a super FOSI who, if they're willing, will decide Sailing Illustrated's Person of the Year, Yacht Racing Person of the Year. How does that sound, Hamish?
Can I nominate someone now?
Sure.
I'm going to nominate a class of person, and that is the Yacht Club volunteer. This is the man and woman who get out there every weekend, help with putting marks out, start and finish races, clear up the yacht club afterwards. The unsung heroes of our sport. That's my person of the year.
Julia, what do you think of that?
That's a great idea.
Okay, I'm making a new page here in my little notebook of nominations. Maybe I can get Mark Holland to make some notes. If Clark Chapin is watching, maybe he will as well. And that's the idea. We get nominations from the FOSI, and then we're going to discuss those. And I'm going to tell you in a moment the schedule that I'm proposing to do. You don't think I'd not come to this show unprepared, do you, Julia?
No.
And we've already got our first nominations. I'm just going to put it in quotes, Yacht Club Volunteers, which is perfect because it can be a class of people. It can be an individual person. It could be somebody even dead, I suppose. Could be posthumous, somebody who's passed away and has had a magnificent impact on our sport. This year, though, I think, is what we're talking about. So that's what I'm proposing. 2024 Yacht Racing Person of the Year. Now, just to test that, earlier this morning, I spoke with this gentleman when I was in my New York Yacht Club bathrobe, as I am. I'm the bathrobe blogger in the mornings on Tuesday and Friday, putting in a mad dash, putting these shows together. And today I had a video call with none other than Super FOSI Graham Sweeney. Mm-hmm. And I said, Graham, you as the original Zoomer during those, 31 watch parties we had?
Yep.
31 watch parties. And he, along with Gordon Smith and Ed Worley and a few others, came on. And I'm proposing that those Zoomers, among others, but those Zoomers would at least be our initial Super FOSI to help determine who is that person. And Graham readily agreed. He said, that's a great idea. I will do it. And I ran this schedule past him, which he was agreeable to as well. So I am suggesting that not only is our holiday schedule, but also our schedule for determining the Sailing Illustrated Yacht Racing Person of the Year would be as follows. Next Tuesday, our regular show at 1300, we will accept nominations. And if you're watching this in replay and want to send in a nomination, that's fine too, but we will close nominations next Tuesday. No show next Friday, by the way. I will be on the road. Can't do a show, and let's just have a dark day because we're doing 3 shows the following week. Our Christmas Eve show on the 24th here, it'll be the 25th down under, but on the Christmas Eve show at our regular time, 1300, we will discuss all of your nominations on our Christmas Eve show. The next day, Christmas Day, which is Boxing Day down under, it's the 25th here, 26th down under, we will have our Rolex Sydney to Hobart Yacht Race watch party. That will commence at 17:30 Pacific, which is 11:30 on Boxing Day down under. We will have our regular watch party, one of our most popular shows of the year.
Absolutely.
And we will discuss your nominations on that show on Christmas Eve. We'll do the watch party the next day, and then we'll do a regular show on Friday the 27th. And then the following week, on New Year's Eve, our regular show, 1300 Pacific time, we will announce the Super FOSI's determination of their selection, the Sailing Illustrated Yacht Racing Person of the Year. And I have some suggestions of who might join them based on appearances on this show. And I'm just suggesting, I haven't talked to any of these people other than Graham. So I am suggesting, besides our Zoomers, Sweeney, Smith, Emmett, and Worley, who are our regular Zoomers, I'm suggesting Pindar, Sangmeister, and Pleasance, who were on with us live last week and have been on the show a lot. Mm-hmm. Pindar, Sangmeister, and Pleasance. I'm suggesting Ross, meaning Hamish, Vice Commodore Harrington, Alistair Murray. Excuse me, it's choking me up. I'm so excited about this. Alistair Murray,
Yep.
Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, and maybe even Lily Zhub.
Oh, that's interesting.
Maybe Lily Zhub. She's been on the show a bunch, especially lately. So if anyone else is really keen to join this group, and I'm not sure, maybe none of these people want to get involved in this madness.
Yeah.
That would be our group, Hamish. Are you willing to join that group and this schedule?
I'm happy to join the group. I do feel a lot of the other names are much better qualified than I am.
Well, you've already come up with a good nomination.
Yes.
Yeah, but they will know a lot of more people than I do when it comes to impact on regattas and racing around the world in the last 12 months.
Ted Ryman is already nominating Charlie Delan. Chris Fury, bravo, Hamish. We don't have a sport without volunteers, so he likes your nomination already. The 2,300, Magnus the Magnificent is saying the 2,300 volunteers at the America's Cup are all heroes. Indeed, they are. Does the winner get to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange?
We'll have to arrange
You think
that.
we can arrange that, Julia?
Sure.
You saw, Hamish, that Trump was at the stock exchange yesterday, and the Time magazine must have sponsored that, and he had all these guys and gals that are coming into his cabinet with him. Steve Atkins, Commodore Atkins from the Madison Beach Club, past Commodore there, he seconds your nomination at Yacht Club Volunteers. We've got Cole Brower as a possible. You've got Grant Dalton as a
Yes.
possible.
Yeah.
You've got several others have come to mind. I talked with Graham Sweeney this morning, who have had a major impact. I mean, Larry Ellison getting Sail GP off the ground with Russell and
Right.
keeping it alive. It's a very popular thing here
Yes.
with our Fozy Sail GP. Jody Shields wants to nominate the barmen and women who keep our hydration levels correct. The winner gets okay. Clayton Embley is, in fact, this is a good idea. We will give the winner, if it's a person, any prizes. Maybe that's a good use, Alistair Murray, for your Ronstand watch timer that you've given us, still sitting here on my back table. The winner gets a bottle of bourbon cream so that he can make coffee a la Julia. Okay. Any other nominations already? John Emmett is a nomination for John Emmett, I think. I'm nominating Tom Eamon. No, I don't qualify. Not yet. Magnus is sucking up to me. No. Not yet. There's true inclusivity. John Emmett is saying women, youth, para-realistically, we have fewer than 7 months to get say yes. He's on that, pushing hard to get Paralympics back in the 2032 Olympics. Okay, again, regular show. We'll discuss nominations next Tuesday. It sounds like we've struck a chord here, Julia. No show next Friday. We'll discuss all of your nominations, and maybe we'll put a Zoom panel together. We'll have a Zoom panel like we did during those watch parties of all the people who are making the decision. They can pro and con it with each other and with all of us watching the show on that Christmas Eve show. And then they can decide in the meantime, and then we'll announce their decision on our New Year's, which is black tie, right? We're going to do a black tie show on New Year's Eve,
Oh, of course.
right?
I mean,
Julia,
of course.
I'll put my little tuxedo on and the gold scarf.
Right.
And, okay. It really isn't an easy decision, Graham Sweeney is saying. Well, he's going to be the leader of that pack. He is the original Zoomer. Claire Harrington's got a negative nomination. The non-sailing CEO. I'll tell you what, Hamish, you wouldn't believe how screwed up U.S. sailing is. I have not talked about it. I've not dwelt on it. But as some of you on here know, they are apparently, one hears, U.S. sailing, not world sailing, which seems to be pooping along pretty well. U.S. sailing, thanks to a number of reasons, including their ridiculous legal action against America One, KR and that crowd, they are $1 million in debt underwater, from what I'm hearing, from reliable sources. They've got a new president. They have no executive director, no CEO. That guy got canned after the Olympics and hopefully didn't let the door hit him on the, on the way out. The bum.
The bum.
The bum. that organization is in serious trouble. Here we are already into the next Olympics, and we really don't even have a National Sailing Association who's got a National Olympic plan. Oh, they made some announcement the other day about some path to something or another, but it's ridiculous. Okay, enough about U.S. sailing. Alistair Murray, I might not be in good shape for the meeting as it's my birthday. You'll be in good shape. You'll be in good shape. Okay, that's the plan. Our guest today is Dr. Hamish Ross from New Zealand, an old mug carol. A Christmas carol? No, an old mug carol. The ghosts of AC's past, present, and future. That's the theme of our show today. But before we get into all that, we cover some of the breaking news in the sport, or catching you up on the news, including and especially the Vendée Globe, the 10th edition thereof. And it's not day 30, it's now day 33 or 34. My graphics department, Julia, did not change that lower third, so I quickly switch off it. There is a photo from Charlie Dallan's boat. He is the leader still. He's still 200 plus miles in the lead. Dallan led his boat Massif Sante Prévoyance led the Vendée Globe fleet into the Pacific Ocean last night. He's headed your way, Hamish. When he crossed out of the Indian Ocean across the line of longitude near Tasmania at 23:45:25 UTC. His elapsed time since starting from Les Sables d'Olonne on Sunday, 11 November, and his elapsed time is 32 days, 11 hours, 43 minutes. So he is still just under by 11 hours the 2016 record set by Armel Lecléache. Dallan will also pass the theoretical halfway point of his race today. And here is the video from Andy Robertson.
So Friday's weather, starting off at the front of the fleet, we're just watching Charlie Dallan across the longitude of Tasmania into the Pacific now, and we're just, he's got a nice little lead here, and he's got the opportunity, we'll see in a few seconds, to move all the way down to the southeast after the corner of the exclusion zone. Otherwise, the things we're watching are this developing a high pressure ridge here, which is threatening to cut the fleet in half, and also involves some compression. And the other thing is this big low pressure system here. Damien Sagan just at the front of it. Quite difficult conditions for him at the moment, but he's got good speeds. And then we're going to watch this group up here in particular on top of this low. They're the slightly more experienced sailors like Isabelle Josch, Jean Le Cam and co on. They're up here in the top of the low by design, by strategy, and that gives them a nice angle all the way down on this jibe, as we'll see in just a few seconds. So that's the general picture of the situation just now. And now looking in a little bit more detail at the front of the fleet. So watching Charlie Dallan here, as I say, getting past the end of the exclusion zone. Now he's working all the way south. This little bubble here means that he has to stay south. This is a little low pressure zone, and watching how that affects Sebastian Simon all the time. Then this high pressure zone, this ridge developing up towards Tasmania, and that is what's going to compress the fleet from about fourth place backwards. You just see them all grouping together more. Quite a good situation at the back for Benjamin Dutroux, Pip Hare and Roman Atasio, though they will see a little bit per compression generally, but all the time watching how Charlie Dallan gets away here. Nice straight line for Sebastian Simon, but this group 4th to 13th, we're seeing this serious compression for them. All the time this little low pressure front coming in from the back, and that means that the compression will continue. But certainly for Charlie Dallan, kind of scot-free, although this high pressure zone developing for him. So that's the situation for the leaders. And now for the group more towards the back, here we see Benjamin Dutroux, Pip Heron and Roman Atanasio on the exclusion zone approaching Cape Lewin. Good conditions for them with this low pressure system coming in from the back to say Damien Sagan quite nicely positioned for that. And the other thing, as I said, we're watching all the time Isabelle Autissier, Jean Le Cam, some of the more experienced skippers who've done the race before. They've got a much better trajectory down the passage off this low pressure.
Okay, so you get the idea. He goes into some detail here, but that's the idea. You can see Charlie Dillon. I don't know the answer to the question that Stingray posed. I'm sure the Fosey do, one of the Fosey at least. Rick Manero, the Harris campaign was unsuccessfully, no, they must have had a consultant. There's no truth to the rumor that U.S. Sailing is using the same financial consultants as the Harris campaign. I don't know why the exclusion zone is so jagged. Somebody will know that. It must be where the ice is, right? Pip is up to 15th. Stingray's saying good for her. Okay, let's.
I sit here wondering how in the world this was ever done without electronic clues and following and all that.
Well, exactly. But, you know, they've had it. This race has only been around for, what, last 15, 20 years. So.
Yeah. But before that.
Tom,
Hamish.
Yeah, this race has really picked up the mojo that the what was the Whitbread race and then became the Volvo race and now called the race. I mean, it lost its mojo when it became in my opinion anyway, a Thomas Cook tour of the world.
The Volvo, the ocean race, yeah.
Yeah, and it seems to me that this is the sort of racing that people like to follow, and it's around the world. There are no stops. It's a full-blown blast around the world, and it's far more exciting to watch and be involved with than what the ocean races has deteriorated into, to be honest.
Well, and of course, as you know, it's because that's how they finance it, by having venues, by having stopovers at venues who will pay real money.
Yes.
And one could argue venue fees are ruining our sport. One could argue.
One could argue that.
Instead of running events where there's, Julia, you like to say, where it's reliably windy and iconically beautiful.
Right.
Right? Venue fees are having at least a deleterious effect on the sport. Let's go back, wrap this up. Here are the leaders, the top three. That's the same, Charlie, Sebastian, and Johan. And Justine Metro, just for the record, is the lead women in 11th. Somebody said that Pip has moved up to 15th. Have they just, well, in 3 minutes, I think they released the latest leader, the ranking leaderboard. But Justine Metro is 11th, Jean Le Cam 18th, and Conrad Coleman is in 27th. And we haven't run a video on Conrad Coleman, so I thought we should today. Here 'tis.
Oh my goodness. Is this what I look like? Wow. I haven't seen a mirror in a while. Oh my goodness. Oh hey. Anyway. Excuse me. So there we go. It is still full speed on board MS Emlyn, and I know it's in the northern hemisphere it's winter, and in the southern hemisphere where we are now it is supposedly summer. But right now I've got a lot of vibes of spring here, and that's because we have just made it through this crazy big depression, this huge big storm. And now it's sunny, the solar panels have done their job, the batteries are full, the sky is blue, it's warm, I'm taking off layers, and I feel a little bit like Elle, and I'm putting up bigger sails again. I feel a little bit like it's spring, you know, like a little sort of bud of a flower sort of unfurling out of the dirt and sort of coming to life again. And so it's nice to have this feeling where, you know, you maybe for a few hours or days you're not going to get smacked in the head again. And considering my broken eye and black eye, that's not just a metaphor. So it feels great to be back to the Jenica and one reef, instead of being down at 3 reefs and the J3. Oh, that was a little desperate there. But even though it is spring in my mind, I've been wrestling a little bit with myself because I've had lots of little breakages that have slowed me down, that have stopped me from sailing at the full potential of myself as a sailor, and also this beautiful boat that we've been preparing for years. And so that's, as a competitor, that's upsetting. And so I got a little bit grumpy with myself and the project, and saying that I'm not able to fully exploit the potential of the package that we've got here, and that's vexing. But equally, to be completely honest, I almost wasn't here at all. MS Emlyn saved this campaign after the summer, after our efforts to find other sponsors had come up short, and so that sort of explains the both the joy of being here and also the frustration, because everything, sales, electronics, spares, bits and bobs were made, fabricated very last moment and put on the boat without a lot of testing. And I'm sort of paying for that now. There's lots of little breakdowns, lots of little things that we should have caught earlier that are now having an impact on my race and on my performance. But I kind of had to, I don't know, kick myself a little bit to say, this is not a problem. It's amazing to be here, and the sun is shining, and we're still in the race. And even though there are repairs, I've still got all my sails. And yeah, so it's all a matter of figuring out how you look at a challenging circumstance, and I am choosing to see it in a good way, and to enjoy the sun, to enjoy the spring, and to enjoy this beautiful weather.
Well, there you have it. This is Hamish in your honor because he's a Kiwi living now apparently in Colorado, or when he's not on the Vendée Globe Ocean Race. And I also am struck by when he's doing these videos, and he's very good at it. Obviously, a plant growing, like it's going to grow out of his head because it's feeling like spring for a moment.
Yeah.
He's like Cole Brower. He's very clever and very, very, very good, very articulate. But this is they're not talking with anybody else except into the video camera, right, Hamish?
Yeah, I mean, you got to take your hats off to these guys. I mean, they are putting their bodies on the line. They obviously don't get much sleep. When the wind's really howling, they've got a lot on. And they're really putting it out there, and to maintain that competitive spirit, determination to win over a period of weeks like this. Well, it's been a month now, and I guess they've got another month to go. But it's pretty impressive. I mean, it's pretty athletic. It shows a high degree of mental fortitude.
Indeed. Well, Julie, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I admire their courage.
Indeed. We do. Oh, by the way, a couple of answers here. Andrew McIrvin saying the ice limit is pushed north when they are near Oz, near Australia, as that is the limit to which the Australian rescue services go. Clark Chapin confirming that. Some of the exclusion zone is determined by iceberg location, and other parts, like the straight line just west of Cape Leeuwin, is due to the southernmost limit of Australian coastal rescue. Okay. Julie Aaron's back and forth talking with Ed Worley about how exhausted. Well, he's got a black eye. He got smacked apparently, and man, oh man, he is exhausted. Yeah, I watched every. Stingray says he's watched every Conrad video. Love that guy. Yeah, the ice boaters. Speaking of ice, Ken Saban is saying it's ice boat season now, and the Renegades, the DNs. In fact, I saw something on Facebook that the Skeeters, I think, are about to get racing up in Minnesota this weekend, so they must have good ice up there.
Yes, it's really, really cold.
Really cold. Hamish says they're putting their dotties on the line. New one from, what's that mean, Hamish? Their dotties on the line.
I think he probably misheard my accent. I said putting their bodies on the line, but
the bodies on their line. See, Stingray reads. He reads something dirty and everything. It's like you're putting their panties on the line or something. Oh my goodness! Hey, let's get us out of this and get us to something like Emmett. Let's get something back to sanity here for a moment. This guy is saying he is doing our coaching corner, the coaching corner with John Emmett. Here it is. Here it is.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. Right now, before you do anything else, please share the feed. The reason I say that is because, in my very humble opinion, it is always better to watch the show live, because one of the nicest things is the comments and the interactions between the Fozy. So if you share right now, maybe a few people extra will be able to see this and enjoy the general banter. So if you look behind, I'm at the Everyone Active Weymouth swimming pool and just doing the final session of 2024. And I think this idea of having a taper is really important. So I'm just going to talk about that a little bit more detail, because everyone thinks of a taper as gradually decreasing the volume of training before a big competition so that you go fresh into it. But actually, in any sort of training periodization, it's really important. So you don't suddenly just stop training. So Steve Redgrave, who's probably one of the most famous rowers in the world, he was actually a mentor for Paul Goodison, a laser sailor, as it were, a friend of mine who was a world champion, Olympic gold medalist and all the rest of it. So when he finished his Olympic career, it was very important to him not to suddenly stop exercising, because crikey, what could happen to the body after 20 years of flat out training if you suddenly stopped? And he didn't want to have something named after him with a negative connotation like the Steve Redgrave syndrome for people who suddenly stop training. Now, this taper is really important with your periodization. So rather than just stop training completely and then have, a couple of months off and then start again in February, just gradually tapering down the training. And then actually it's almost like a warm up. So I'll gradually start doing a little bit of training and then bring that level up and up and up. And that idea is something that you really need to forward plan. So I'm already planning the warm up, but this seems quite a good time of year to have off and just to try and get on top of things. I've talked a little bit about the importance of friends and family and that mental rest. So that's something we really need to protect and look at that time. And in terms of being in the UK, that's one of the reasons Lily probably spends less time here. Over the winter it's colder and the days are much shorter, making it hard to do productive training. So again, that makes sense to have that time off. And it's important in terms of development to realise that the changes in your physiology, the muscles will improve much, much quicker than the tendons. And I think that's probably why I need to have that extended period of rest now, just to really get back on top of things at the start of the season. Last season was very hard with crikey, I think we had 2 World Championships around January time and a Europeans in around October time. So it's a really full-on season. Things are very much going back to normal. And what you'll see in 2025 in terms of the Olympic circuit, at least in terms of the classes they race, some of the top performers will have some breaks. So they'll step away from their Olympic class sailing, maybe do other types of racing, or just generally have a break. Because one of the most important things in performance is you're super keen to take the cover off each morning. And I mean, I love sailing, I think more than my body will support me, which is something a lot of people can probably relate to. But this is a really good time for me to have time off and also review and reflect. For those people doing Olympic cycles, it's now a very long time to the games, so they can really have a little look at their goal setting. And also now the sport as a whole is really expanding. I think probably the biggest example being Sail GP, which was maybe 6 teams, 6 events, now going to 12 teams, 12 events. So we need to think very carefully about how we spend our time. I will look back and do my yearly review, and I really enjoyed working with Lily. I think that's something I'd like to do more so. And I also think that Youth World Championships is very special. The interesting thing for me is the age of youth seems to be getting older and older. So for me, youth was always under 19. It's now universally, I think, across a lot of sports, a lot of classes, it's now under 23. So when you think about ILCAs, you become a master at 30. There's only 7 years of senior competition, but that probably reflects the amount of time people would do an Olympic campaign. It's also talking of Olympic campaigns when we all change letters. So it's a very small world in terms of coaching, team leaders, etc. The same people doing the same circuit. Originally, they were called probably Eurolymps. They were then called World Cups. They're now called Grand Slams, but it's all very much the same. It's the top European circuit that everybody has to do to be successful, plus one or two other events. So this cycle, it will be Long Beach will have that Grand Prix. So everybody knows what you need to do to be successful. And that road, doing that year in, year out, it's pretty tough, but it is what you need to do. The model is already set. And what will happen is every 1 or 2 cycles, sailors will come in, new sailors, new talent, and other sailors will go out. And the same with coaches. I remember sat round a table at the World Championships in 2012, big round tables, 12 coaches, all top British coaches. Every single one of them, apart from Hugh Styles, was working for another team. Hugh was then coaching Alison Young, and then actually he went on to coach the Swedish for a couple of cycles. So yeah, it's that funny time of the Olympic cycle where we all change the letters on the back of our ribs, but probably carry on doing much the same job as we've always done. So yeah, exciting times ahead. And I just really look forward to any questions and what the Fozy would like me to try and talk about next, because this is the golden opportunity to make those plans for the future.
Planning for the future.
There we go.
Huh?
Yes.
John Emmett, get to the front of the fleet. Get to the front of the fleet with John Emmett. John Emmett Sailing, and our guest today is Dr. Hamish Ross, who's standing by again through that video. He's been with us as a co-host, Julia, since the top of the show. It's nice to have Hamish on.
It is. It is. All his knowledge helps.
It's nice to be back, and particularly at Christmas time too.
Yes.
I mean, for us, Christmas is sand, beach, sun, heat, swimming.
Okay, you guys, stop being so nice. Say something. Somebody said here in the comment we need a crouton of the year as well as the yacht racing person.
Oh, that's probably
of
a good
the year.
idea.
Crouton of the year. Alan Long says sitting is the new smoking. Emmett's right. Andy Rose tells me, he says, Andy, our good friend down in Newport Beach, California, of course, the Gov Cup guru, he says motion is lotion.
Yes.
You got to get out and walk. You got to exercise. Julie, you got your PT person who comes up and makes you exercise. Right?
Twice a
Thanks,
week.
John. Great advice.
Yeah.
You do year-end goals for next year, Hamish, or do you have a 5-year plan? Are you a communist or a Marxist with a 5-year plan?
No, I don't. Well, I get some general themes in my head, but that's how I work.
Julia, do you have a 5-year plan? Do you have annual goals? How often do you set your goals?
Minute by minute.
Okay, well, we can pick that up again. I see Richard Gladwell is on here, Sail World NZL. The Vendée Globe ice gate has been moved 6 times since the race started. Surprisingly, there have been no icebergs spotted by the race surveillance system, which are of concern to the race boats.
Of course.
There's Joe Holtzman saying that's great advice from John. Joe's getting his knee rehabbed. In fact, he must be back on. He was, I thought, had a rehab appointment today. Clark Chapin says, as to crouton of the year, it would be tough to argue against the non-sailing CEO. Maybe we should do that just to get him one more time, Julia.
Yes.
Hamish?
Absolutely.
Life? Gordon
I
Smith.
saw Graham Sweeney's comment.
What's his comment? I'm planning for the future. I bought gold handles, silk lining in the plot. Gordon Smith's comment's good too. You see that, Julia? Life is what happens while you are making plans.
Yes, I agree with him.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's get into, we got to do the World Match Racing Tour, which is going on in China. We told you about that the last couple of shows. In fact, we featured it a week ago. So let's get on quickly with the update there in Shenzhen, China, where they're into the quarterfinals now after the racing. Breezy racing the last couple of days. The headline was WMRT quarterfinalists have been decided in fresh breeze. They've kind of gone from nothing to not quite blowing dogs off chains, but they had 20 knots of breeze.
Well, that's good.
The quarterfinalists for the 2024 WMRT Shenzhen Bowen final have been determined following the completion of the repechage round today. Now, I should just explain what they did. They did one complete round robin. Then the top 4 boats out of that round robin matriculated.
Yes.
Went on to the quarterfinals. Then they did another round robin of the remaining 8 boats, and the top 4 in that remaining round robin go into the quarterfinals. That's how they determined that. We didn't explain that prior to this. So they've now got their top 8 teams. We'll tell you who they are in a sec. So there's now 8 teams into the quarters. Some great pictures, and may I say, guys and gals, that the WMRT, Ian Roman, James Pleasance, they are sending us these pictures, and with the pictures, not only is there a press release explaining what's going on, but their lower thirds, they've got the crew's name, the crew's crew. It's really fabulous. A gusty northerly breeze and clear skies arrived in Shenzhen's Dachan Bay as the repechage continued, with this being the final opportunity to secure a spot in the quarterfinals. The intensity of the racing in this repechage reflected the stakes. Yeah, okay. It sounds like Magnus the Magnificent writing this. That got a reaction out of Hamish, Julia.
Yes.
Oh, well, you need that excitement. You need to build the sport up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he recovered from that nicely. Where were we? With the fresh breeze, teams had to adapt to different conditions than earlier this week. Francis, how do you say this, you guys? Aurélien Pirot won the repechage, finishing with a 6-1 record and topping the leaderboard on countback over Britain's Ian Williams, who thank goodness has made it through, who also finished with a 6-1 score. Now look at these. Here's this guy. He is leading. He was the top guy out of all when everything was said and done. This is this guy I had never heard of from France, Ian Garetta, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know who this guy is, but he finished overall after the rounds robin 8-3 on a 73% score. Okay, tied with the Swiss Eric Monin, who's a vet, and Johnny Berenson, who's a vet, and Chris Poole is the defending champ and U.S. top match racer here from the U.S. and on and on. They're the top 4 that went forward, but it was a breezy, cool condition. And now again, this is a screen grab of the lower third that the WMRT, Ian Rowan's taking the pictures, Ronan, and look at, there is on the left, Ian Williams with his crew, and they're all the crew names.
Oh, good for them.
And exactly, every picture that came out in their press release today had all of this in it. The great pictures, and for a change, the name, not for a change because it not necessarily with WMRT, but others in our sport should be so inspired by this great press activity. Now, this is Timothée Rossi, who did not make the cut, unfortunately. He's a Fozy. We know him from Gov Cup, another one of these top French sailors. And he and his crew did not make it through to the quarterfinals. Then this is also a cool thing that James did. He has taken a picture with the 4 quarterfinalist pairs. And with that picture, out came again the names from left to right. Chris Poole, the U.S. on the left, he is pitted against Ian Williams in their quarterfinal, and it was first against, I guess, these are 3rd and 4th player, 4th and 5th place, I guess. But then it was first against 8th, second against 7th. I don't think you had the luxury of choosing your opponent, as you often do in other match racing events. And then Eric Monin and Aurélien Pirot. Is that how you pronounce that in French, Pirot?
Yes.
In that's the second pair. Then Ian Garetta, this guy I don't know, from France, never heard of him, in fact, against Cole Tapper there, our Fozy and World Youth Match Racing champion a couple weeks ago in the KSA when that event took place. And then far right, Johnny Berenson in the orange from Sweden against Nick Egnott Johnson from NZ. And they will be in the 4th and final quarterfinal. That racing's taking place today.
That's a great picture.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. And there's the pairings on the left again. That racing takes place today, Saturday, and then the semis and the final will be on Sunday, again in Shenzhen in China. Hamish, any thoughts on all that before we press on?
I was just actually, as you were talking, Tom, remembering how we used to sort of see this competition as the seedbed, if you like, going into the America's Cup when these skills were in much more demand going into the America's Cup, and it's sad to see that linkage has dissipated somewhat.
Indeed. Good point. Julia, anything?
No, not really.
Okay, let's move on to the Hamish segment, the America's Cup past, present, and future. He being Ebenezer, we said, right? Are you ready to do your Ebenezer role here, Hamish? Let's start with America's Cup past. And here is this day in history, the 13th of December, 1892. Now, Hamish knows what happens because he supplied this segment yesterday to me. Julia, do you have any idea what happened on this date? And this is pretty arcane. This is pretty.
No,
but
I don't.
If any of the Fozy get it, I'll be impressed. The 13th of December, 1892, America's Cup passed. And John Emmett is saying the Far East 28s are good. Yes, they look like good boats. I've never sailed one. Alan Long, I'd like to hear more info on these Far East 28s. They look like fun vessels to sail. We'll get somebody to opine on that. Maybe some of the Fozy know about them. John Emmett, now for the AC, you need top. Yeah, this is a good point. Now you need top moth sailors, Emmett is saying. Right, Hamish? I see you nodding your head, yes. Hamish, Keith Ryman always says the same thing. Keith Richards was born. Peggy the monkey passed her swimming test.
Oh, my.
Peggy the monkey. Tell us who.
Monkey had passed away by then.
Tell us who Peggy the monkey was, Hamish.
Oh, she was the pet of Susan Hen, or Susan Hen Nee Bartholomew, who was the very first woman to sail in the America's Cup. And I'm doing some work on her right now. And I have found...
You have to be careful how you say that, Hamish.
Why is that?
You're doing some work on her? I mean...
I'm doing some research on her, shall we say. And I've come across an interview with her before her death, and she advised that her husband, Lieutenant Hen, was quite ill, and I suspect it was a recurrence of malaria he picked up in Africa when on the official search for Dr. Livingston had occurred during the America's Cup. And in fact, she took a good deal of charge of that racing. Now, people may unkindly rate that to the results of the racing, but if that is in fact true, she may well be the very first America's Cup skipper, woman America's Cup skipper, to compete in the match, and indeed possibly the only one. In fact, is the only one, if that is the case.
She drove the boat.
Well, drove in a way that was Victorian, in the sense that the owner, of course, had a helmsman and had professional crew. But she indicated that her husband was very ill during that match, and which means that she was the one really running the show at the time. And that's quite interesting some information. And he did suffer from ill health regularly, which would tend to suggest potentially a malaria recurrence he had picked up during his time in the Navy, and which forced him ultimately to retire from the Navy.
Dr. Livingstone, I presume.
That indeed. And he was beaten to finding Dr. Livingston by, of course, Stanley, who was commissioned by our friend Gordon Bennett of the New York Herald.
Oh, yes.
Who was also covering the first America's Cup in a big way.
Yes,
right?
Indeed.
Okay, skipper, not driver. So she was, as Steve Gruber was saying, she was the skipper. She was in effect, the owner's representative, which used to be a term of art in the racing rules. But she was the owner on board. She was there's another word that was used in those days, Hamish. What was it? Master, the master of the yacht.
Yes.
Right? Not necessarily the skipper or the helm, but the master of the yacht.
Yes.
The captain.
Yeah.
Okay, Hamish, what happened? I don't see anybody getting it. What happened on this?
Well, the New York Yacht Club accepted Dunraven's challenge for the America's Cup, and it was the first challenge under the then new and still current deed of gift. And it took a lot of negotiation across the Atlantic to finally get a challenge underway after that deed of gift was published in 1887, and to a great deal of furor on both sides of the Atlantic in terms of the inappropriateness of the changes.
Now, that was actually, if I can interject, that was the third deed of gift, right?
That is correct. And
so there is the book. The book that you helped Stephen Suchia, he wrote it, I guess. You contributed to it. You get a credit in here. We featured this on the show the other day, and I know Ed Worley's already bought one and others, but you can buy it from the Harrisoff Marine Museum.
It's a great book, and the book is entirely Steve's. It's due to all his hard work, and I was honoured to be asked a couple of questions on a few points, but I don't take any credit away for the work that Steve's done in producing that magnificent book. It belongs in every America's Cup aficionado's book collection.
Okay, so it was on this day in history that this gentleman, whose real name was...
he was otherwise known as Lord Dunraven. Officially, he's the fourth Lord Dunraven. He was the Earl of Dunraven, amongst other titles that they had accumulated over the generations. And very interesting gentleman. And of course, he has, until recent times, had a bad rap, if you like, emanating out of the subsequent challenge in 1895. There he is. He was in the Royal Navy Reserve during the First World War, indeed ran a hospital ship for them. He has an amazing career, both politically and during a time of great turmoil in Ireland. His title is an Irish title. He became a senator of the Irish Free State, which is interesting considering his background as an English aristocrat. And he did a lot for land reform in Ireland as well. So he's a man of many achievements, and he is the man that got America's Cup racing again after what some people considered at the time a disastrous changes to the deed of gift.
So the deed was changed 3 times. The third one was in 87, and this was the first challenge after, if I've got this right, the first challenge after the third deed, which people thought, oh, that's way too restrictive, will never be fair to the challengers and so on. And then he came along and they raced in what, 93 and then again in 95?
That's correct. That is correct, Tom. And of course, as we know, the 95 one degenerated into a great deal of argument, and there were special hearings at the New York Yacht Club afterwards, and a great deal of acrimony in the press. And the image you see there is a drawing of the special committee investigating claims that the defender had taken on board illegal ballast, which was subsequently disproved by the investigation.
So, Ebenezer, tell us, this is the ghost of Christmas past, or of Cups past. Is this the worst incident in the history of the Cup? Was this the most contentious moment in the Cup when New York launched this investigation? He was a member of New York, wasn't he, at the time?
He was an honorary member. They had a practice of allowing challengers to become honorary members during the time, and he resigned his honorary membership, and indeed, but I think they passed a resolution to expel him as well. Yes, it was highly contentious. I think it was a clash of cultures, and I do think the press had an impact on what happened subsequently, and there was a lot of peacock feathers and honour being preserved around the place that helped create the controversy. Whether it was the most controversial time in the America's Cup remains to be seen. Some may say that the catamaran and big boat match of 1988 was very controversial.
No way!
And of course, Tom, there's probably some more recent times where courts were involved as well that might be considered controversial.
You just said because you lost in 2010. You lost in the courts between 28 to 2010. What side were you on with that?
Yeah, well, we did put the Cup on a different trajectory, and we're still seeing that trajectory today, aren't we?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Touche. Hamish, well done, touche. So just at the end of the day, there was a collision in one of these. Was it 93 or 95? 1893 or 95? There was a major collision, wasn't there?
Well, I wouldn't say a major collision. There was certainly a few incidences, pre-start incidences. I think it was 95 that there was a degree of collision. But nothing, I mean, this yacht behind me is indeed Valkyrie 2, the short-lived Valkyrie 2, because after competing and losing the America's Cup in 92, she went on the next season to race in the big boat series throughout the UK. And when she raced the Mudhook Yacht Club's race on the Clyde, she was involved in a very major collision and sunk. And she was, while she was subsequently recovered, she was deemed irreparable and scrapped. And that, as I may have mentioned before, gave rise to a court case, a very famous court case involving contract law and how one could contract as between competitors certain racing rules that supplanted the collision regulations. It's called the Valkyrie, called the Dunraven case, and it's still on the law books.
There are some great comments in here from our very, as usual, smart Fozy. And the Chris actually's got the 5 ranks of British nobility and on and on. But McIrvin, Mr. Dr. Andrew, is on saying he was thrown out of the New York Yacht Club, but reinstated just a few years ago. I know one of his family very well, and she went over to NYYC when he was reinstated as apparently an honorary member. And I think, Hamish, it's fair to say that the late, great Bob Fisher, as well as yourself, did a lot of work to, shall we say, clear the name of Lord Dunraven.
Yes, I was very impressed when, well, Bob and I, during one of the America's Cup events, sat down and I opened the conversation and said, look, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think Dunraven's had a bit of a bad rap in history, and I believe it's undeserved, and he did a lot of good. And to my surprise, he avidly agreed with me, and we were birds of a feather, really. And I'm delighted that Bob really helped, indeed pushed to clear his name and to restore him back to the pantheon of heroes that I certainly believe, and the late Bob certainly had believed he belonged.
And just because, if nothing else, he got the cup going again, convinced the Royal Yacht Squadron to challenge after the third deed was put in place by New York.
That is correct.
Okay, Mark Holland is wondering if the Australian wing keel controversy, as you would say, in 83 wasn't an even bigger deal, or was that just amplified because we had modern media then?
I think it was exciting for 2 reasons. One is, of course, it was technical innovation, but particularly because you had a winning streak that was potentially about to end. And that's what caused excitement amongst the non-sailing community, I think. You had this longest winning streak in sport. It was under risk. It was at risk. And it came down to that last final race, and the whole world was gripped by it. And I wouldn't call it, yes, it was controversial at the time, but measured against some of the other controversies, I wouldn't rate it as highly as some of the other 3 we mentioned.
Okay, well, let's carry on here with the gentleman. We got through the Dunraven investigation, but one of our Fozy lives on some of his land because, as you said, he was an interesting character who did a lot of other things besides yacht racing and being in the Royal Navy. He fell in love with the States, and particularly with Colorado and the Rocky Mountains, and he went out and bought a huge plot of land. In fact, tried to really corner the market in Colorado. This is a painting. Albert Bierstadt was commissioned by Dunraven to make a painting of Estes Park and Longs Peak area in Colorado in 1876 for 15 grand for this painting. The painting, originally displayed in Dunraven Castle, is now in the collection of the Denver, Colorado Art Museum. Did you know about all that, Hamish?
Well, I knew that he had, in fact, he was guided by Buffalo Bill Cody out in the West. He did several hunting trips and was a great fan of America. And he really was a great fan of the West. And you're correct, he did acquire some land out there.
6,000 acres.
Yes, exactly. And so he's a man that I believe there were some court cases afterwards challenging his title. And in the end, I can't be certain exactly what happened at the outcome, but they did face some legal challenges on his claim to the land.
Well, what he was trying to do was to build this big preserve, and he did lose the court cases and ultimately built a big hotel on that land, which then burned in 1902 or something. I don't know.
Yes, that's right.
Something.
He wrote a book about his experiences in the West, which has been republished, and it's worth a read. It's very interesting, the sort of people he meets and his description of the American West at the time.
So, do we know who lives on what was then Lord Dunraven's land in Colorado? Which of our foci? The aforementioned, he was mentioned earlier in the show.
Right.
Great sailor. Grew up sailing really at our club in Michigan. Joe Holtzman.
Oh, Holtzman, that's right.
Is living in Estes Park, Colorado, and I confirmed that with him before we went to air this morning. Okay, Hamish, so much for your Ebenezer ghost of cups past. How about ghosts of cup present? Clark Chapin say, ooh, I know, I crewed for him. Yes, Clark knows Joe Holtzman well, as do I, as do several others on here. Let's move on now, Clark, to America's Cup present. We've just come out of the 37th edition thereof. And as everybody on here probably knows, there's a new protocol. There is the same old challenger of record. This is the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron's current Commodore, Gillian Williams, and the Royal Yacht Squadron Racing Limited chair, the chair of that organization, which is not the club, it's a sister organization, sits side saddle. The chair, Bertie Bickett. I don't know Ms. Williams, but Bertie we know well, and he's a good guy. They have signed a deal to be the challenger of record, and of course to the defender, RNZYS, for AC 38. That's the astonishingly cool Royal Yacht Squadron in Cowes, Isle of Wight. The Royal Yacht Squadron from Sail World a couple months ago has confirmed that it lodged a notice of challenge for the 38th America's Cup. They'll be the challenger of record again. Quote, we've put in another challenge for the 38th America's Cup, and that challenge has been accepted by RNZ, said, unquote, said Bertie Bickett, a director of the Royal Yacht Squadron Limited, after RNZ had successfully conducted its defense of the 173-year-old trophy. And Ms. Williams, Gillian, of course, is the Commodore of the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron. An earlier photo when the Cup was out front there. I guess it's been back for a ceremony, but God knows where the Cup is now, Hamish. Is it ensconced in the club, do you know?
I would imagine it is. I can't see any reason why it wouldn't be. Occasionally it's taken out to the various functions, or indeed sometimes to go on tour appropriately around the country. But it's largely, most of its time will be spent inside a special bulletproof, very secure safe.
Which was built after the madness that happened in what, 2002, 1?
No, it was in the late 1990s.
So it was before, it was after they won it in 90, that is RNZ, after they won it in 95, but before they defended in 2000 the first time.
Yes, if memory serves me right, it was about 96, 97 that it was damaged or thereabouts. And but then wonderfully repaired by Garrard, the original builders of the Cup. And of course, it's gone through many additions and changes since.
Mark Holland confirms 1997. So before we get to Mr. Dalton, the burning question is, Stingray is asking, what happens if Sir Jim Ratcliffe cuts his funding of the Ineos AC team, which we already know and we've said on this show? By all accounts, he is cutting substantially, not all of it, but his funding of the Ineos team. And there is a chance that, well, we'll see if he raises the money elsewhere, but there is a chance, Hamish, that if Sir Ben Ainslie, the team principal, does not raise sufficient funding, we could have a challenger of record without, at least currently, without a team. What do you think?
Well, I've heard those rumours too, and the intel I've got is that he's pulled back from funding, will agree to sponsor it on a much lesser basis. So that leaves the Ineos team without a billionaire backstop. And I understand that they're in full fundraising mode to try and get the funding they need to challenge and compete next time. What happens if they fail to do so leads to an interesting point. Do they withdraw their challenge? If they do, then they need another challenge or record will be required. They could stay in place, intending to challenge, but indeed not showing up at some point but during the event that they would have to cease being the challenger of record, and they would then be open to a new challenge.
What happened in 1995?
Well, 95, there has been circumstances in the past where there have been a challenger of record put in place. And with the consent of everyone, they've kind of remained the challenger of record to perform the challenger of record duties. That's never really been tested in terms of the legitimacy of that. I mean, if you have a challenge that's not proceeding, then one I would argue that you're open to a challenge. And then the whole ball starts over again of mutual consent discussions, and there you go.
Totally agree. In fact, I'm not going to go into the advice I've given here, there, but you and I have talked about it. So let's keep that off to the side for the moment. But in both 92 and 95, when I was running the 92 event, 88 and the 92, we had the Royal Perth Yacht Club come back as the challenger of record because they had been the defender before the 88 madness. And Dr. Stan Reed was representing the Royal Perth Yacht Club. And then they ultimately did not front up with a team. And Dr. Reed and I, with the agreement of everybody concerned, San Diego Yacht Club, whom I was representing, and all of the challengers, created a thing called the Challenger of Record Committee, CORC, in which Dr. Reed then ran on behalf of all the challengers, even though the original Challenger of Record, we kept the deal in place, but they did not have a yacht, they did not have a team, they did not have a challenge in 92. Same thing happened, Hamish, you may recall, in 95.
Yes.
And I'll tell you how that happened. Mark Holland and a few others will be interested in this. What happened, Julia, there was a certain Commodore at the San Diego Yacht Club, and I didn't run the 95 Cup, another guy did, past Commodore down there, was head of the organizing committee. I was with Dennis's team by then. Mm. And they decided that they wanted to have as the challenger of record the Yacht Club de France, because they wanted to go to Paris for meetings. All expenses paid trip.
Why not? To
have meetings with their I'm not kidding. I kid you not. So they signed up YCF, Yacht Club de France, and of course they didn't send the team. Mm-hmm. Okay, Hamo.
You raise an interesting point, though, is what happens when the challenger of record is defeated during the course of a Louis Vuitton series. And the only legal answer really is that challenge is held in trust for the remaining challengers by that challenger of record. And that's the only legal basis that the challenge can remain current.
Well, you know that the protocol that we've been writing since way back, since the 80, since the 92 Cup, has said just that when actually CORC, once there was a challenger that had won the Challenger Selection Series, they became the de facto challenger and were substituted in. New York had actually started that language when they started having multiple challengers in 1970. That was the first match with multiple challengers.
Well, the protocols we wrote, Tom, tended to be, we have provided the next challenger in time became the new challenger of record. And that sort of kind of secured the situation. But more recently, what we've seen, the protocols provide that the challenger record remains in place. And that's something that happened in New Zealand in 2000 and 2003 for certain. And I do recall discussions when Prada, as it was known, as Luna Rossa was known, then attempted to inject itself into discussions of the match as between Alinghi and Team New Zealand. And I can tell you Alinghi quietly and somewhat politely suggested that they really should be going out the back door and leaving us alone to work out the terms of the match.
We got comments from smart people as usual on here. Alex Hayworth and Ed Worley are back and forth on this point, among others. Joe Holtzman, who we said is living up in Estes Park, Colorado. Interestingly enough, Dunraven's Lodge, his home, has been beautifully restored by one of Joe's buddies in the Estes Park Car Club. I don't know if you all know this. Joe Holtzman was an engineer at Ford back in the day and was one of the developers, Julia, of your favorite car.
Aha.
The Mustang, the original Mustang.
My favorite though, was the retractable hardtop.
Well, but the Mustang nonetheless.
Well, it was next to the more modern.
Oh well, you're more modern than all of us. Hamish, you can see that I've got the slide up here of the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron still. What's going on at the RNZ? I hear they've lost something like half their membership. They're selling assets, that they've got serious problems. Am I just way off base, or is there some truth to that?
Look, I don't have any more up-to-date information. Look, essentially they've had problems. Yes, they have been trying to raise money. I certainly, the holding the America's Cup defence offshore hasn't done the club any favours whatsoever. And there's still a wide body of sailors and indeed members who believe it was the wrong call and continue to believe it is the wrong call for the future. But yeah, look, I don't offer them any ill will. They still run sailing, they still run events. It's a very professional sailing club and is an integral part of the New Zealand sailing community.
What is your home yacht club now? Because you're no longer a member. You resigned from the RNZ, as did our good friend and lawyer.
There are lots of people who resigned. I'm a member of the Royal Akarana Yacht Club, a yacht club that's in Auckland as well. It has nice new facilities. I'm also a member of the Classic Yacht Association and a member of the Ponsonby Cruising Club, which is another yacht club nearby.
Well, wasn't the Royal Akarana, you say Akarana, I always make it sound like Spanish. Weren't they the club at which the Challenger of Record organized the racing back in, weren't they a big help for the 03 Cup?
I thought there was a Bucklands Beach Yacht Club.
Oh, you're right. I'm confused. You're right.
Yes, that was further out from the city of Auckland, further out east, and they provided a lot of logistical assistance to the volunteers and to the race committee.
Question from Alex Hayworth: did RNZ ever get its $3 million legacy payment from the America's Cup organizing committee, meaning Mr. Dalton?
I don't know the answer to that, but shortly after Jeddah was announced for an America's Cup event, a lead-up event, I know they got a bunch of new youth sailing vessels.
Yeah, what? They were Elliott something 8s? I don't remember. Okay, and nothing else on the squadron?
No, nothing else for me.
How about this gentleman? Any insight into Mr. Dalton? Julie Aarons and others told us that she thought he was going to step down. She knows him very well. They're good friends. But now one hears that he's going to carry on and run the next cup as well. What are you hearing, Hamish?
I've certainly heard no rumors that he was stepping down or resigning. I think he's got a tough gig this time. I mean, the world economy is quite a different place than it was when he was setting out the last cup. And what I'm hearing around the place is that Spain's clearly out. It's no longer in the running. It doesn't wish to host the AC38. I hear that the Saudis aren't as interested as many thought they might be. And indeed, the news this week where they've agreed to host the World Cup football in the future may have an impact on that. Who knows? So it's going to be a tough one. And my gut feeling is that either it could well come back to Auckland, but there won't be the money that he managed to secure previously, or alternatively, it could be held in the Middle East somewhere in one of the smaller Gulf states as a possibility. But, these high-tech boats and high-tech campaigns cost money. So I do find it interesting that the protocol has not come out yet. And I do wonder whether they're able to write a protocol until they've done a venue deal. Because how can you design an expensive cup unless you are pretty confident of raising the money? And it does beg the question of, are we going to see America's Cup Light coming in the future?
What do you mean by an America's Cup Light?
Well, are they going to change the boats? They say not. Are they going to reduce the ability of challengers to build new boats to try and make it less expensive? Is the time period of racing going to be much more compressed? I know they had an ambitious program again to hold events in the lead up to the actual Challenger Series and the match. All of that's got to be on the table if you don't have the money to fund it. And so it's going to be interesting. And one wonders whether we're going to see a protocol very quickly at all.
Well, now we're into Ebenezer, Mr. Ebenezer. We're now into the America's Cup yet to come. I think anything else on the present, meaning AC38, what happened this year, anything else on all that before we move forward to speculation about what teams are going to front up again? Well, you're already suggesting there may have to be a quite different style or version of the Cup, an America's Cup Light.
Well, if they suddenly raise the money, they get a great venue deal somewhere, then that's great. The Cup continues in its current form. But, one looking at the environment has to ask whether they will achieve the goals that they set themselves and what impact that would be on what's been announced so far. And also, you've touched on before about the other competitor, which of the current teams are going forward. We've spoken about Ineos and its lack of funding. New York, I'm sure, seems to be in a good position. It's got its backstops in place, but I'm sure they would welcome more funding potentially. If you look at Luna Rossa, there's a big question mark over that team.
Well, let's say it, because we know that Patrizio Bertelli, we've said it before on the show, he's got a health problem, and it's a significant health problem. And his son attended most of the meetings, one hears, at the end of the Cup in Barcelona on behalf of his dad, on Patrizio's son. And his son is more interested, we hear, also in car racing than he is in boat racing. So we'll see if they're around. How about your buddy Ernesto? What's Ernesto say?
Look, I've got no indication one way or another whether he intends to proceed further. It remains to be seen. He's always been his own man and keeps his own counsel. And again, you got to put another question mark over that one as well. So, of all the challenges that were there this time, the French obviously depend on funding and things. You've got to say the only reasonable bet to be there again in 38's got to be the New York Yacht Club.
Well, and I'm not going to go into what I'm hearing about them at the moment because I don't really know for sure. But I think Hap Fouth, who was one of the co-partners with Doug DeVos, I think Mr. Fouth has probably done his contribution. Doug DeVos is very keen, one hears, and I hope he remains with the program, and we shall see. And he's obviously a billionaire who could do the whole thing himself and then some, but nobody wants to do it unless you're Larry Ellison. Nobody wants to do it themselves, right? Or unless you're Ernesto. What about Clark Chapin's comment that the world is full of venues that don't host a second edition of a major sailing event, to name three now, San Francisco, Bermuda, and Barcelona? Hamish?
It all comes down to whether the venues see value in it. Everybody points to the impact that the Olympics had on Barcelona back in the early 90s, and it really brought the city out into one of the big key international cities, and it did a huge amount for it. I believe the past America's Cup in Auckland, New Zealand, did a huge amount for Auckland and New Zealand in terms of its profile. But when you got governments, and I mean central and local governments, who've got stretched budgets, as many seem to at the moment, a lot of this comes under scrutiny, and New Zealand is no exception to that. So if you're asking the government to front up tens of millions of dollars, if not more, you know that politically they're going to get whacked every time the nurses want a pay rise or the doctors want a pay rise or whatever. Oh, there's plenty of money for rich sailors, but not enough to help the poor nurses. And it's getting politically, it's getting a harder and harder sell. And so you've got to present a pretty cogent case of where the benefit lies for the venue. And I think people now have a great deal of skepticism for a lot of these studies that are done saying, oh, it's, we invested 100 million and it produced $2 billion of return, with these sort of so-called magical multipliers that get applied in these venue analysis reports.
Ed Worley asks, how much money did the Spanish lose hosting the Cup? Do we know that?
Nobody knows. Nobody will know.
And
because they do these as you know, these economic impact studies reports are all, depends if they're done by the Chamber of Commerce or the local university or whether it's done by, it's just, you'll never know. But it's a tough sell when you realize that you're giving as Hamish said, $70 million to what feels like or is rich yachties.
Yeah.
And you've got all sorts of other problems. I mean,
No question.
It's a tough sell. Even the Olympics is a tough sell. I think you're right, Hamish. I rather suspect that it's not going to be Saudi Arabia. I think there'll be money on offer, but I think the teams, however many teams there are, and there may not be many, I think the teams will coalesce around a venue fee of several $100 million, or at least $100+ million, and it'll be Abu Dhabi or Bahrain. Do you see Auckland getting together that kind of money in the time remaining to host it?
Not that kind of money. I think Auckland would be what I'd call a backstop option if really they couldn't make an overseas venue work. If there's money on offer elsewhere, that's where it will be. But Auckland will be the Hail Mary option.
So Julie Ahrens, who is very close to Grant Dalton and spent time herself there in Barcelona, I'm going to read her whole comment. No, they have not, meaning the Royal Yacht Squadron have not lost half their membership. Well, they've lost a big chunk, Julie. I know that for sure. If the members were so unhappy, there were more than 800, there wouldn't have been 856 members in Barcelona. Were there that many Royal Yacht? Okay, I'll take your word for it, Julie, because she was there as well as part of that crowd. Yes. Who's Hayes, Shaisg, resigned? If not, he would have, you're talking about Jim Farmer or Hamish. Maybe you're talking about Hamish had resigned, but if he had not, he would have been formally dispensed with, Hamish. Julie Ahrens is asserting he would have been formally dispensed with. And no, Grant Dalton has made no decisions yet. And see, Julie is in this, as if it's Dalton's decision when you and I know it's the squadron's decision. The venue is the decision of the defender trustee. The defender trustee is being run. Let's put it on the table. The defender trustee is not the defender trustee. They have delegated, which is not legal under New York law, they've delegated their trustee duties, responsibilities, authorities to the team, to a person in the name of Grant Dalton, and that's wherein lies the Shakespearean rub, Hamish.
Mm-hmm.
No comment?
No comment.
Okay, and she goes on, Julie Ahrens, who's a super fosy here, she's on here a lot. There will not be a venue announced until June, 8 months after the finish of AC 37. Why are you speculating? Because it's fun to speculate, Julie. Nothing has been set yet. It is way too early. American Magic is not through. Sir Ben is not through, meaning done with for the Cup. He said so in well, what he says, Julie, is not, talk is cheap, as Bill Koch once said, as I once said to Bill Koch, and he always reminds me that I said that to him when I was trying to recruit him for the 92 Cup. The Italians are not through. Barcelona and others don't want the tourists anymore. Dalton is not asking the government money because he knows it is not there. It must be supported by the private sector. Well, what I heard him say, Hamish, on the radio the other day in that interview with, you'd know the gentleman, I don't remember the gentleman's name, that if it comes back to Auckland, and he was it felt to me like he was raising the possibility of it going to Auckland to put some pressure on his bidders in the Middle East. But he said it'd have to be a combination of public-private sector money. And I just think he was raising he's like Trump. I call him the Donald Trump and upset Julie Ahrens, but I think he's publicly negotiating to put pressure on the other side of the equation, which is Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, maybe Dubai, maybe even the Saudis, where, as you pointed out, FIFA announced on Wednesday that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would host the 2034 World Cup. There were no other bidders, really. And CNN Sports made quite a bit about this here in the last couple of days. Saudi Arabia official, this is the headline, announced as the 2034 World Cup host. Human rights groups warn of unimaginable human cost. The nation claims, this is from that same article, the nation claims the investment is part of the Saudi Vision 2030, a project driven by the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to diversify the economy and situate Saudi Arabia as one of the world's leading countries, through its sovereign wealth fund, the Public Investment Fund, the PIF. Saudi Arabia has invested billions, as you all know, into changing the landscape of sports such as golf, boxing, esports, I would add horse racing, and even sailing for that matter, and Formula One in recent years. Hamish, Julia, any final thoughts on all that?
I resigned from the squadron when they announced the Jeddah event. That's what caused my ultimate resignation.
Mm-hmm.
John Emmett is saying Dalton said in his interview he wanted public money. We cut and pasted the statement in a previous show. Yes, indeed, John did. So he is not, Julie Ahrens, he is not disavowing himself of public money for an event that was in Auckland. But again, I don't think any of that is operative. I think that's just a negotiating tactic with the others. Pedro Foiling Sailor, it's my fault, Tom Eamon. You're the one that winds Julie Ahrens up for her to do such a long I love her comments. I love everyone's comments and thoughts, as long as they are constructive and thoughtful. And finally, we'll wrap this up, America's Cup past, present, and future, with a comment from Bermuda's Andy Cox. Make America's Cup great again. None of us is going to disagree with that, right?
I'll sign up to Andy.
Sign up to that. Hamish, can you stay for the last little bit? We're just about...
Yes, I'll stay for the last little bit.
You've been a great co-host.
Yes.
You've been a great co-host, Dr. Hamish Ross, an old mug carol, a Christmas carol, a cup carol, the ghosts of AC's past, present, and again with apologies to Charles Dickens. He said not future, he said yet to come. Did you know that, Julia?
I may have.
You went to Stanford, of course you'd know that. J. Frederick Bland will give him a final comment. Take the cup back to billionaires competing for ego. Hamish, regards from John Sangmeister. Wish comments allowed photos. You know, that would be fun. We got to figure that out, how we can get joint comments. I mean, joint meaning from, because this is consolidated comments from Facebook and YouTube, and people like that. They like to be able to comment on both. So, okay, we'll carry on here. There is John Emmett has put that in the comment again from Sale. That was that great article by Richard Gladwell, and John is linking to it. If you're just joining us, we've had Hamish on. Dr. Hamish Ross of New Zealand has been on as our co-host. Let's continue as we wrap this one up. We're an hour and 2 hours and 4 minutes into this show. We'll wrap this one up. We're to the last leg. And this amazing regatta is going on down in Mar del Plata in Argentina. And I just want to talk briefly about it, show you one video because they're in the last couple days. And these kids are amazing. And you talk about breeze. I mean, we had breeze in Shenzhen, but look at the breeze that they've had, not in this photo, but that the Opti Worlds in Argentina, where they've got 225 sailors from 52 nations. And the kids are reveling, at least the top kids anyway, and probably some of the bottom kids. They're into the Gold Fleet now. They've got these 225 kids broken into one, I think, 50 boat fleet for the finals. There are a few races in. And this young Brazilian chap, Arthur Bach, is still leading, having a fabulous series. There he is on net points of 15, well ahead of his fellow countryman Eduardo Essinger Backhauser, good German name, Julia, Backhauser, on 23 points, and the two Spanish kids of Juan Domingo and Mateo Carbonell on 31 and 32, respectively. I'm not going to try to pronounce Stingray, that Greek name again, although I thought he did pretty well with that the other day. But take a look at this video. Fabulous stuff. How's that for a video?
Wow.
From the Opti class from the World's going on in Argentina. Great stuff. A couple of comments here. Luca Craig, who's down there, a neighbor of yours, Hamish, in Auckland. Sailing related by surname in your earlier slide. An interesting interview on our evening TV news during the week. Sophie Egnott Johnson, who's Nick's sister, I guess, is competing this weekend in Ironman 70.3 World Championship in Taupo, there in NZ. Her mother, Leslie, who sailed for Bill Koch in '92, I know Leslie well, Leslie Egnott Johnson, when she was Leslie Egnott, said they tried to get her, the daughter, to go down the sailing route, but she found her own path. Sophie is probably more well known for her rowing skills. Bobby Steele thinks that the best venues for sailing are the Hauraki Gulf. He's a Kiwi, so he's a bit biased. Lives in Australia as well. In Fremantle and Newport, Rhode Island, in that order. Well, those are three good venues. San Francisco is pretty good too, Julia.
Indeed, but we're prejudiced.
Clark Chapin agrees that was a great video. Nice. Let's go sailing. That's the purpose of that final video, is to make us all want to get up from here and at least go walk around the block, if not go sailing. Motion, yes. Hamish, is lotion.
That was fantastic. That was a great image of what really helps and makes our sport. It's so inspiring. It's so great to see a new generation coming through. And hell, if they can sail those bathtubs like that, what could they do?
Julia, you were going to say.
I know, those boats look so small in those waves, which are probably about 3 feet in.
3? Some of them bigger than that, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, they look really small.
Hamish, what's the in New Zealand? We were talking about this the other day on the show. Do the kids go from Opties to the P class?
Yes.
What's the progression?
Yeah, also, we have a styling as well that's used, P class styling, and that's usually the progression. But certainly, Opties is the main first training boat.
Okay. Well, and I think as John Emmett and others have said, the moth is a big deal. You've got the Moth Worlds down there in New Zealand, right, in the first couple of weeks of January?
That's true. That is true. We've got some good international events happening in the country now, which is great.
Well, it's
We've got
nice.
Sail GP in a few weeks here too, which is up in Auckland, which is another great event that certainly Auckland and the country are looking forward to.
I had that as a note to ask you, what's the mood about Sail GP coming to Auckland? That's the first time because it's been down wasn't in Welly, where was it? It was in Christchurch.
It was down in Christchurch.
Right?
It was just off the Christchurch. It was in we'll call Littleton Harbour, which is across the hill from Christchurch. It's look, I think the mood in Auckland's certainly ready for it. We haven't had much international sailing at all to any great extent since the last America's Cup. And I think everybody will be looking forward to bright and breezy and lots of action that the Sail GP is bringing to us all.
Good. Well, I know our crowd, the FOSI, really likes Sail GP, most of them, not everybody.
Yeah.
Some people. Our friend in Long Beach is not a wild fan. My favorite boat as a kid was a Dab Chick. That boat was fast. I think Stingray saying that. He also sailed some Fireballs. Sail World NZL, which of course is Richard Gladwell. The America's Cup has to find an enduring hosting solution that runs from match to match and ensures that the cup can always be held in the home waters of the defender. I think, Hamish, you would agree with that. You and I certainly support Richard Gladwell's sentiment in that.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Gordon Smith says New Zealand is shrinking, currently more people leaving than moving there. Is that true?
That is true right now. We do go through periods of, particularly when there's a bit of an economic downturn, people tend to migrate, particularly to Australia. The other impact COVID had when the country was one of the heavy lockdown countries of the world, it thwarted particularly young people's plan to do what we call the OE, the overseas experience. So there's a bit of catch up on that's happening. Part of the reasons why my sons are now working in London. And so you put all those together and it is making for a net outflow as opposed to an inflow.
Ted Ryman, Hamish is always such a cool guest. Well, I wouldn't get carried away, Ted. I mean, he's pretty good. But,
Yes, he is.
Huh?
Yes, he is.
He's average.
But I'm a bit of a history buff, and he educates me with his posts. Keep up the good work, Hamish. And as Clayt Embley said, and I know you agree with this too, Hamish, freedom always wins.
It sometimes take a long time, but it does ultimately win.
Speaking of freedom, we're now free to do Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Yes.
Because I have not one, not two, but 5 jokes that were sent in by the FOSI for our final segment of today's show number. What is this? This is Alistair Murray's.
591, is it?
No, not 591.
I mean,
791. Alistair Murray sent this one. Everything will kill you, so choose something fun. Huh, Hamish?
Yes.
Here, I'll let you introduce. Hamish, you can talk us through these. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. Sometimes I wonder, is my boat thinking about me too? That's from Bannerow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Now, this next one, this may be the best one we've had in a while. Martha Parker, by the way, is saying, "Hi, Hamish. Great to see you. Always great to hear you, Tom." Thank you, Martha Parker, who runs, what's the name of her store in Newport, Rhode Island?
Oh, hello, Martha. Lovely to hear from you.
Martha Parker. What's the name of her store? Martha, give us the name of your store. We're going to promote you. Nice to see you. But look at, reply Ted Ryman. Of what nationality is the largest landowner in Scotland? Gordon Smith is asking.
I believe it is either a Russian.
Really?
Yes, it's not it's a foreign one, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not Russian, it could well be a Scandinavian.
I wonder if Gordon, he probably does. He knows the answers to just about everything. Team 1 Newport. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Blake Middleton, who got it even.
Yeah.
Oh, Ed Worley is saying the king. Does the king own more land in Scotland than anyone else?
They have the Balmoral estate, which has been added to over the years, but I believe there are larger landowners.
Okay, Hamish, there is Rick Banner. How did we get off on all that? I know. Here's this next photo, though. This has got to be a caption contest, and the best caption was maybe the one that got submitted with this photo. Designed by the Fosi at Sailing Illustrated, the drinking show with a sailing habit.
Right.
And who else but Ted Ryman would send that one in?
Oh,
Hamish?
that's good. Yeah.
Gordon Smith says the Danish. He said the Danish own more land in Scotland than anyone else. Kath Wynn. Is that a friend of yours, Hamish? Kathy or Kath Wynn?
That's my mother-in-law.
Your mother-in-law? So that's Samantha's mother?
Indeed.
Always
I think
learn.
she's listening to you.
Say again, Julia?
She's listening to him.
She is indeed. Always learn so much from Hamish. What a nice thing for a mother-in-law to say.
Yes.
Oh, she's a sailor. She's a sailor, and she's a great fan of sailing, and she always takes an interest. She's in her mid-80s, and she's always enthusiastic and loves the sport, loves the America's Cup, and those are the people we need in our sport.
Well, that's a really nice sentiment. My mother-in-law, who I love dearly, the late, great Geraldine Wilson, Leslie's mom, who was also my mother's best friend. I mean, the two of them. And I think the only thing she ever said to me was, "What are you doing out in the driveway with my daughter when you bring her home after the Friday night football game?" The windows in the car got all steamed up in the driveway. She'd turn the light on. I kid you not. She'd turn the light on the side of the house, and it would turn on. And Leslie and I would say, "Well, okay." And then we'd carry on. And then she'd start blinking the light. That's what my mother-in-law did, Hamish.
Don't knock if she's rocking.
What is this by Ted Ryman? I can't see what it says up on the bow of that boat, on the neck of the bottle, but it's fabulous. Somebody's got to tell us where that came from. The sailing show with the drinking habit. And finally, Ted Ryman, thinking ahead, Hamish and Julia, should we be worried that 2025 begins with WTF? Good way to end up our WTF segment. Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot, and it gets us well and truly to the finish line. And we appreciate all of you staying, those of you who have stayed. I know that Alan Long and a few others had to get to a cocktail party. Hamish, you can say it today.
Like, follow, and share. Join the Fosies. It's a great thing to be involved with.
And welcome to comments. Comments are welcome, even in replay. We do appreciate all of you, including and especially Hamish on today's show, who helped give us food for thought, jokes, and more to keep us on the air. Patreon.com/join/sailing.
And Tom, I'd just like to say to you and Julia, thank you very much for your show over the years, and it's helped bring sailors from all around the world together. I know I've met up with some of the other Fosies I would not have met up with but for your show. So thank you from us all for all the good work that you do, and our very best Christmas wishes to you and our very best wishes for the coming year.
Hamish, great way to wrap that up. Thank you very much. Julia, final thoughts from you?
I love the Fosie.
I know, you, especially the British.
And
the Aussies.
Yeah.
And the Kiwis and the Bermudians, all those Anglo boys. Huh?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Hamish, thank you very much. We have a great group, and we appreciate it. Look at all the nice comments from all of you. Here, Pedro Foiling Sailor, one of those Aussies who you love, who loved my mother. I will forever be grateful to Peter Stevenson, a.k.a. Pedro Foiling Sailor, who struck up a long distance relationship with I mean, they were texting back and forth.
They were great, very active pen pals.
Yeah, they were indeed. Thanks, Hamish. John Emmett is saying, Ted Ryman is saying, thanks to all of you. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for your support here. Thanks to those who gave us audio, video, and images for today's show. Julia, one last chance for your final thought.
I agree with the Fosies now. I'm ever impressed with Hamish.
Okay, we're done patting ourselves here on the back. Hamish, thanks again. Thanks to all of you. We hope to see you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend wherever in the world you are. In the meantime, go sailing if you can, and sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao. For now.
Bye.
Bye, Hamish.
Bye. See you soon.
Thank you very much.